Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I've got 4 strange true stories and reports about glitches in reality, missing time, and possibly even parallel universes. First, 2 guys are driving home and seemingly slip into an alternate reality. And then a man has an extra strange journey while heading to Maryland from New York. Next, a woman driving home after visiting her father when she experiences a possible time glitch, or maybe even a vortex. And then finally, a security guard is on the job in San Antonio, and after doing his paperwork, he suddenly finds himself on a highway almost 200 miles away. It's going to be a wild one tonight, so set your watches, grab your gear, and let's ride.
Number 1. Dear Biker, this occurred 4 years ago while we were traveling back from Winnipeg to the Pass, Manitoba. Me and my friend G went to Winnipeg for the night, traveled there during the evening, and came back the following day at 1 p.m. The way to Winnipeg was normal. Took us the usual 6 hours, and I've done this trip numerous times as the Pass is my hometown, which I've recently moved back to from Winnipeg. On the way back, the first 3.5 hours go by normally. I was driving the speed limit most of the time as it was icy and snowing. So we came to the turnoff, where Highway 6 turns off onto the 60 at about 4 p.m. At this point, the conditions were ideal and the sun was just about at the horizon. It was a beautiful sky with a crimson sun. Now this is where things got really strange. The first odd instance happened about 20 minutes into this highway. A red van overtook us right before a right turn and rounded a sharp bend. When we came around the bend, the van had just vanished, and it was a long straight stretch for a bit. I thought this was weird, but I didn't pay any mind to it, nor did I mention it to my friend. Shortly after this, I made a comment about how gorgeous the sky was. By this time, the sun was just cresting the horizon at about an 11 o'clock angle. It's about 4:45, so we've been on the highway for around 45 minutes. This highway takes about an hour till you get to the next turnoff, which is 10, past the final off route to the Pass. We drive for the next 20 minutes without words and just the radio play. And then my friend G made the comment, "Have you noticed there hadn't been any road signage?" I hadn't realized, but he was right. There were no signs indicating when a turn was coming up, nor were there any signs in regards to how far we are from towns. No signs whatsoever. At this point, I noticed the sun hadn't moved a single inch in the sky. On top of this, we hadn't seen another vehicle in a while. I thought all this was strange, and so did my friend. Unnerved, I sped up, going between 120 to 140 kilometers per hour. I started having this overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. And then I noticed another anomaly among the other glaring things that were already making this experience really messed up. All the trees were exactly the same height, and the tree line was extremely dense, like almost a wall of trees. This was really scary because I then realized that this scenery wasn't at all what it should have been. Where we should have been a sparse tree line with small ponds and marshland should be on both sides of the highway. We've been on this highway for 2 hours now, and the sun still hasn't moved. No road signs, no traffic, and I don't know where we are, but it's not where we should be. Me and G are just stuck on this highway, and we're starting to get scared, trying to piece together and figure out what's happening. Now, I've known G my whole life, and this experience is undeniably our most terrifying. And then out of nowhere, the sun sets unnaturally fast, which takes maybe 2 minutes. And we are enveloped in this darkness of a starless night without even a moon. I'm scared, and so is G. Just 2 25-year-old men, and we were pretty well shaken. And just then, this ominous, oppressive feeling was unbearable, and we came to the turnoff out of nowhere. Almost 3 hours we were stuck on that highway. That takes barely over an hour to travel, but it didn't end there. Just when I thought we were returning to normality, I glanced in the rearview mirror because I thought for the first time in 3 hours I'd seen headlights, but I was wrong. There in the back seat, sitting behind me on the driver's side, was a black human silhouette with glowing yellow eyes. G and I both saw it, and I couldn't believe what we were experiencing. All of what happened is so unreal and fantastical sounding, but what you're reading is true and articulated to the very best of my ability. For the next hour and a half, we were just terrified and mostly sat in silence. We finally pulled into the pause shortly before midnight. We were stuck for 2.5 to 3 hours in some sort of limbo with unreal anomalies that made no sense and were totally conscious and aware the whole time. To top it off, when we pulled into the pause, I noticed our gas tank level hadn't even moved. We are totally lost for an explanation of what happened. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Greg. Number 2. Dear TB, I've been debating with myself on sending this to you, but thinking about it more and more lately. So I've decided to finally take the plunge. This happened back in March of 1995. I had traveled from upstate New York down to Baltimore for a weekend conference, and I was on my way home. I had negotiated the nasty interchanges around Baltimore very nicely and was approaching Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Note, this would be Interstate 83 North. The sun was low in the sky off to my left, and I was listening to a radio station when it suddenly became full of static. I took my eyes off the road for about a second just to find the button for the radio to search for another station. When I looked up, the tractor-trailer I had been following, he was about a quarter mile ahead of me, was suddenly gone. Then I realized it was dark, and suddenly I was crossing from Pennsylvania into Maryland again. I was less than calm. I took the next exit off the highway, instantly ended up on a rural road, and spent another half hour trying to find a town. Thankfully, it had a Pizza Hut. So I went in and ordered dinner. It was nearly 9 p.m. I'm certain the waitstaff thought I was delusional or crazy because I couldn't remember the name of the town, which they had to keep telling me. To this day, I don't remember what the name of that town was. I called my sister, terrified and not quite hysterical, telling her what had happened. I lost 4 to 5 hours and was still 4 hours from home, but had enough gas to get there. She was sure that I'd merely gotten lost, and to this day, even though she fully believes in extraterrestrials, tells me that I got lost that afternoon, but I'm sure that I didn't. I don't think about it that often, but when I do, the stress it brings with it is really intense, so I might as well write about it while I'm stressing just as I sit and fret. I made it home without incident, in the normal period, again, without having to stop for gas. I don't drink, and I've never done drugs, and have always believed in the paranormal. Nothing like this has happened since, and I've done a fair amount of traveling between then and now. So I really don't know what happened. I have no memory, no flashes, no dreams, just the recurrent terror of the moment it went from sundown to 9 p.m. Thanks. Signed, Lyle. Number 3. Dear Biker, my father was in a rehabilitation center for physical therapy following a triple bypass heart surgery. The rehab was 2 towns away from my house. One night when I was leaving the rehab, I took the longer route because it was more brightly lit. The shorter one was dark with no streetlights, and I didn't like traveling that route after dark. So I was driving the longer, brightly lit one when a car in front of me pulled to the side of the road and let me pass by. But strangely, as soon as I passed that car, it immediately pulled out and began following me, very closely with high beams. Just then, I crossed the border into the next town. There are lots of stores, restaurants, and a hotel in that area, so the lights are even brighter there But suddenly, everything on the road went black, and I heard a sound like an overhead garage door closing. Just a loud bang. And I found myself driving on a pitch-black narrow road with no lights and no car following me. I wasn't on the same road that I'd been traveling. I began talking out loud to myself. What the hell? Where the hell am I? What has happened? It was around then that I realized that my headlights were shining on a street sign up ahead. This sign said Gale Road. Gale Road was the dark, shortcut route that I absolutely wouldn't take at night. I found myself almost all the way back to the rehab, though I'd already reached the next town while driving home. Now I had to repeat the drive, but this time I had to take the pitch black route home, the route that I didn't want to drive at night in the first place. My father always called me after I got home. He knew the trip back home took me about 45 minutes, but I began thinking that this time he was going to wonder what was taking me so long to get there. I never looked at the time, but I assumed that whatever happened, putting me almost all the way back to where I started, should have added at least 45 minutes to my trip, maybe longer. When I finally got home, the phone rang. It was my dad. And before I told him what had happened, I apologized for it taking so long to get home. I asked him how many times that he had tried to call me. First silence on the other end, and then my dad said, "This is my first time calling. It's only been about 10 minutes. You're not late. I was actually just calling early to remind you to be safe." It was then that I explained to him what had happened to me, but in reality, I have no clue what actually did happen. A vortex of some kind in the road. Or did the car that pulled over in front of me and then proceeded to follow me have something to do with whatever happened? Has anyone else out there ever experienced anything like this? Thanks. Signed, Stacy. Number 4. Hey TB, I'm an armed security guard in San Antonio, Texas, and I was working the late shift downtown. 11 o'clock, I was doing my paperwork, returning to the news station that I was guarding. I wrote down 2300 and, well, that's the last thing I remember, except coming to, walking down a highway at 4 in the morning. A lady and her son stopped and picked me up. I had no idea where I was, and they drove me to a convenience store where I called my son and he came to pick me up. It took him about an hour to get there. I had like 5 hours of missing time. When I got home, I went to sleep for like a day and a half, and when I finally woke up, I had bruises all over my legs and my arms. My uniform was perfectly clean, so I hadn't fallen down or anything. I just had no idea how I got way out there. It's all just very strange. It took me a full week to find my pickup truck. I had to call the sheriff's office to get them to track it down, and it was parked on the side of the highway, just sitting there, perfectly parked, not a scratch on it. I hadn't wrecked it or anything, and it never happened again. But it was like 5 or 6 hours of missing time and a lot of bruises. I honestly have no idea what really happened to me. All I remember is filling out that paperwork at the end of my shift, and I ended up way out past Wallersville, which is east of Houston. And no, I've never had any seizures, and no, it really doesn't scare me for some reason. I just wonder how I got out there, you know? It's been crazy. I've never had any, or I've never seen any strange things in the sky either. I've been listening to your channel now for about 2 years since I've been doing this. When I found my truck, my weapon, gun belt, everything was in there. I never take it off until I get home. My wallet and everything else was all still in the truck. Nothing was on me, and my shirt was untucked. My boots were untied. It's all just crazy. I was just wandering down the highway, and my head felt totally weird for like a week. I just really wanted to share this experience in case anyone else out there has had something similar happen to them. Thanks, Biker. Signed, Garrett. And there it is. All I have for you tonight. So, what did you think about these reports? Are we all just living in a simulation? Or are realities, dimensions, and time just weird occasionally? I can't wait to hear your thoughts and theories about these in the comments below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you've had a brush with the unexplained and would like to share your story, just send it to the email address in the description, and well, your experience might just wind up in a future episode. Anyways, thanks so much for riding with me tonight. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.